Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to take a very quick look at the game Bloodsuckers. Now this game is for 2 to 4 players, ages 13 and up, and the average play time is about 60 minutes. Now in this game, one team is going to be taking on the role of the vampires, while the other team is going to be taking on the role of the vampire hunters, and they're going to be doing battle in the small peaceful town of Blackwood. Let's just take a quick moment to look at the components and see how the game is played. Alright, now as far as the components are concerned, I know there's a lot going on here, but I'll do my best just to sum everything up. Over here on the left is the game board. Think of this as the world map. This represents the town that both the vampires and the vampire hunters will be fighting in. And you'll see locations on this board like the nightclub, police station. Let's see if I can zoom in on some of that. You got the nightclub, the police station, the church, graveyard, and the hospital. And there is a wheel on each location to help players keep track of the status of each location. This particular one being that it's currently being fought over. This indicates that the vampires won at that location, that they've scored this particular building and quote-unquote point. Same thing with this. This indicates that the vampire hunters won this location. This one indicates that the location is locked and will never be fought over. And finally, this number up here tells players how many innocent bystanders will be in the battle during that round, and I'll explain that in a minute. Now, besides the 5 locations, you also have this day and night timer, so to speak. There are 4 turns during the day, this one being the hunter turn, then you've got the vampire turn, then again the hunter turn, and finally the vampire turn. And then as it goes from day to night, you've got the vampire turn, hunter, vampire, hunter. And this represents a full day. And this game is broken up into days. So you're going to be fighting at one location each game day. Now, with all this talk of fighting, where is it actually going to take place? Well, that's what this mat up here is designed to do. This is going to serve as the battleground for all of the battles that will occur at the various locations. It's broken up into 5 columns, so to speak. You've got one side for the vampire hunter to place characters, and you've also got a space for the bystander that they'll be fighting over, and you'll also have a space for the vampire characters. Now over here on the right, we've got some action tokens. Players will be able to bank action points at the end of their game turn, and they can bank up to 2. And should they do that, they'll collect these so that players can keep track of how many they've banked for the next turn. Now, you've heard me talk about these bystanders. Basically, they are the innocent people that are getting in the way between this conflict, and that's actually what both teams are going to be fighting over. The team that manages to win more bystanders during a combat round, again, each round is made up of a full day. The team that manages to win the most bystanders during a particular round will win that location. And you can keep track of each bystander by these character cards. Now, I won't get into this right now, but these are 2-sided. The character, or the bystander, will be on one side, and there's a small tracker here for players to keep track of their progress as far as the bystander goes. And the other side contains a character for either the vampire hunter or the vampire. And I'll explain how they work in a minute. Now, to go along with this, you've got these attack tokens here. And as players try to win these bystanders over, they're going to be playing cards and putting these attack tokens on the bystander cards. And the person or team that has the highest value at the end of the round, again, you can keep track of that by using these markers. The person that has the highest number at the end of the round will win that bystander. Now, you're probably wondering, why does some of these say 1 and why does some of these say 2? It's for the same reason that the time track has these numbers on it too. 1, 1, 2, and 2. This is simply used in a 3 or 4 player game, just to indicate that player 1 should go first, then the player 1 on the vampire side should go next, then player 2 on the vampire side should go, and that player 2 on the vampire hunter side should go, and then player 2 on the vampire side should go. So these numbers are simply for teams of 3 or 4. So if you're playing a 2-player game, you can ignore these numbers and just use the number 1. Now down here you have 2 decks of cards, and one deck will go to the vampire hunters and the other one will go to the vampires. And basically they are made up of unique cards specific to that faction. For example, the vampire hunter deck has a lot of things that would obviously destroy vampire, like you've got Molotov cocktails, frag grenades, you can apply first aid, things that humans could do, crucifix, swords, so on and so forth. While the vampires have cards unique to them. They can gouge, they can rage, they can drain. Yeah, there's a number of different cards here. Wall crawl and throw, so on and so forth. And players will be making use of these cards during their turns to attack bystanders that will be on the battleground or on the mat here, and will also be using these cards to attack the enemy characters that are fighting at these locations. So you can use these cards to not only attack the bystanders, but attack the enemy characters that are also at that location. Now, as far as these gems, so to speak, over here, you've got adrenaline tokens, which are used by the vampire hunter, and you've got these blood tokens, which are used by the vampires. Anytime that a player on the vampire hunter side plays a strike card successfully, strike cards are cards that attack the other player directly, in particular the characters that are going to be fighting at these locations. Anytime that happens and they attack successfully, they gain an adrenaline token. And adrenaline tokens can be placed on the player's own characters to give them extra actions for that turn. Now, as far as the vampire side goes, it's the same thing. When you've got a successful bite or a successful drain going as the result of a strike card, they'll be able to take a blood token, and you can then assign those blood tokens to the vampire characters, and those will increase the attack strength of that particular character card. Just to round things off, we have a die here. Basically, the die is used for various cards that will be coming up. Some cards task players with rolling to see what the attack strength of a particular attack might be, and so on and so forth. It's not used for movement or anything like that. And finally, you have an on your turn set of cards here. One is dedicated to the vampire, while the other one is dedicated to the vampire hunter. And on the other side of these cards lists things for the advanced game. There's actually symbols on the various character cards that give these characters certain abilities. Like there's little symbols up here, and that'll allow them to do special things. But if you're playing a beginner game, you could ignore these symbols. But there's a list of these special abilities on the back of the reference card should you want to use them. Now, game setup will vary slightly depending on how many people are playing the game. In this case, this is a simple 2-player setup. Each player will start with a hand size of 5 cards by simply drawing them from their deck, and they'll also get 3 character cards. The vampires will pay attention to the vampire side of things, and the vampire hunter will be paying attention to these. Now, it's important to note again that these symbols can be ignored. These are for the advanced game only. These give these particular characters special abilities. Now, at this point, a die is rolled to determine who will go first, and depending on who goes first will determine what time of day this tracker will start at. If the vampire starts first, this wheel will be turned to dusk, and if the vampire hunters start first, this will switch over to dawn. Now, whoever's turn it is, as far as who goes first, they'll go ahead and pick one of these locations. And let's just say for the moment that the vampire goes first. Let's put that over there. And goes ahead and decides to fight at the police station. So what'll happen is both sides will play a full day at the police station until this wheel goes all the way back around to where it started. And that'll end the combat for this location, and whoever has the most bystanders will win the location and turn the wheel either there to signify that the vampire hunters won, or here to signify that the vampires won. But in this case, the 3 will be selected, and this just tells players how many bystanders will be fought over during the round. Now, since the location calls for 3 bystanders, I'll go ahead and deal 3 from the character deck and just put them like so that you can see it. And at this point, the players will go ahead and assign their characters to the conflict. In this case, I'm putting 1 character on each of these 3 columns. They act as individual entities when fighting over these bystanders. And the vampire hunter will simply do the same thing. Now, since it's the vampire's turn, he'll go ahead and take a look at his reference card to see what kind of actions he can perform. On a player's turn, they can perform 3 actions. They can play 1 combat card, move 1 character, draw 1 card, feed 1 vampire 1 blood token, give 1 character to teammate, bank unused actions, never more than 2, or you can give, receive, or trade 1 card with a teammate at no action cost during step 1. So there's a number of things that a player can do on their turn, but keep in mind that you can only perform 3 actions. Now let's just say for the moment that the vampire wants to go ahead and play a command card. And again, the object here is to capture these bystanders, or have the most bystanders by the end of the day so that you can win that location. To do that, you're going to play these attack cards. Attack cards allow the player to place 1 of their attack tokens on 1 of the bystanders that they're attacking. In this case, the attack card that the vampire is about to play will be a throw card. In this case, make an attack of 4, or -1 to all current hunter attacks. So the vampire is going to go ahead and make use of this card. Now he also has what's called an impact card. And impact cards do a variety of different things. They buff other cards, making their attack better, and so on and so forth. But in this particular case, it instructs me to roll a die, subtract 1 from the roll, and add that amount to any attack. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the die. I rolled a 5, subtract 1 is 4. So now I can add 4 to the 4 on the original attack card to make my total attack 8. So what I'm going to do now at this point is pick a character to attack with, and I'll go ahead and place a token on the number 8 on this bystander card. Now, since I've played 2 cards, that's used 2 actions already, so my turn's almost over. Now, so for my 3rd and final action, I might decide to play 1 of these strike cards. And strike cards are designed to attack the other player and possibly destroy their characters across the way. Doing so will remove their attack tokens on these bystander cards, so these might sometimes be a good idea to play. The bite for the vampire, for example, can actually turn a character on the other side into a vampire if left unchecked long enough. And the drain card for the vampire side can actually destroy these cards immediately. Now, another perk of using these strike cards by either side is that you can gain both these blood and adrenaline tokens if the attack is successful. In order to block a strike card, you'll need something called a dodge card. Now for my 3rd and final action, I'm going to go ahead and play this drain card. It can only be played at night. If not dodged, gain 1 blood token. So I'm going to play that. Now the vampire hunter is going to take a look at his command card hand to see if he has any dodge cards. Unfortunately he does, and he has 2 attack cards, a pistol, a submachine gun, Sunlight, which is a strike card that can only be played during the day, Reload, and First Aid. These are both impact cards, no dodge cards. And again, dodge cards are only there to block these strike cards. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any, so the vampire is going to go ahead and use that attack to destroy 1 of these characters across the way. He'll just go ahead and destroy this one, and that'll go into the discard pile. Now, since that concludes the 3 actions, we'll just go ahead and take a look at the rest of the steps real quick. You'll discard and draw unstun characters if they are stunned and rotate the clock dial. In this case, I'm not going to discard any cards. I'll just simply draw up to my hand size of 5. And there's no characters that are stunned that I need to unstun. And then I'll go ahead and rotate the clock dial. Now this indicates that it's the Vampire Hunter's turn, and the Vampire Hunter would then take their turn, perform 3 actions, discard and draw, and so on and so forth. Now, I just wanted to note something real quick before I signed off. Whenever you're playing attack cards, the attack value on the card that you play is not added to the current attack value on the bystander. It just simply replaces it. So that'll prevent someone from, sort of being a runaway leader by playing a whole bunch of attack cards on one bystander. So you'll actually have to pay attention to your impact cards and play them in conjunction with your attack cards to try and move this token up the track as far as possible. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Players are going to be continuously taking 3 actions, doing things to try and get their attack value as high as they can on the bystanders until the day comes to a full circle. Once that happens, whoever has the most bystanders under their control, again, the person with the highest attack value, wins that bystander. And the team that has the most bystanders at the end of the round will win that location. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the vampire side had won 2 of these bystanders and the Vampire Hunter had won 1. In that case, the die would then be switched to the vampire side, and that round would come to a close. And then the players would go ahead and pick another location to fight at. And the nice thing about the game is that you can actually pick how many locations you'd like to play before you actually start everything. So if you want a really quick game, you could play 1 location or possibly 3 locations. If you want a full game, you can play all 5. So you can make the game last 60 minutes or 90 minutes if you want. But if you're in for a quick 30-minute experience, you could just play just a few locations. And the person with the most locations under their control at the end of the game wins. And there you have it. This is just a very brief look at the game Bloodsuckers. Admittedly, I didn't cover everything that was in the manual. This was just a very brief overview to give you an idea as to how the game flows and how it's played. You can check out my review at www.dadsgamingaddiction.com, or you can simply click on the link in the below description. That'll take you there as well. This is Vince. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.